Here is this is coming from England. A member of Parliament, I'm not familiar with the guy, somebody had sent it to me, a guy named Darren Jones. And he is questioning Brian Palmer, who's the head of public policy for Amazon in Europe. And I don't know, in some level, like, you get the sense that in England, the people are even more sort of like shocked at this because we're just, on some level, you feel like the way that people are treated in Amazon warehouses is, in the words of George W. Bush, uniquely American. But the British are really cutting to the quick here. And we should be having hearings like this. Yes. And we should have had a ton of hearings like this.
I think Kazar has called for hearings on, I think maybe it's Elon's companies. But yeah, like this is what we want from the squad and squad adjacent folks.
Yes, yeah. And we should have seen a lot more of this
before they lost the majority.
But that was one of the problems with Pelosi, is that she quashed a lot of different hearings. She quashed people like Katie Porter from sitting on hearings where this was type of thing. There was a fundamental, and I believe, misbelief. I think some of it was ideological, but I think a lot of it was also just a misunderstanding of the political moment. And here is Darren Jones, member of Parliament, a Labour member, talking to an Amazon official about the way that they treat their workers.
I represent a constituency that has one large Amazon fulfillment center and another one just on the border. It's a couple of years ago now, as a constituent who was 63, he was working with you just to fill his time before his pension. And he came to see me in my surgery to tell me that, I don't know if it was a wristband or a device or a tablet, we had some kit that basically told him he wasn't packing things quickly enough. And he'd had 2 strikes already, and he had to go and see his productivity manager. So he went to go and see the productivity manager, and the productivity manager said, "Why are you not packing things more quickly? The system is telling us you're not being productive enough." And he said, "I'm 63. He said, "I'm working as quickly as I can. Pretty cold in here. I can't go any quicker." Now, if you were to take that example outside of the kind of technology discussion, you'd have some real concerns around age discrimination. But this was your technology tracking that worker's productivity in packing. That is surveilling the worker, isn't it, not the goods?
I'm not familiar with that particular example, but
yeah, I don't want you to comment on the individual case because that's a cop-out of an answer. I want you to answer the question based on the example. Do you track the productivity of your workers in your warehouses, yes or no?
Yes.
So what you just said to the committee, that you don't track the worker, is not true, is it?
What I said was the systems are not focused on tracking individual workers.
What do you mean by focus?
That their primary purpose is not to track individual productivity.
You understand from the worker perspective, if they've got a bit of kit or a device that's saying you need to be quicker, quicker, quicker all of the time, from the worker's perspective, that feels like the focus is on them, doesn't it, not the goods? Do you recognize that?
We do, and since that you suggested this a couple of years ago, we have made changes in response to employee feedback on how those metrics are assessed. As I said,
pause it.
Early in
I just half expect him to go like, we no longer deliver an electroshock when we get a sense that the trend is off of our productivity targets for them. And again, this the whole thing about focus. Well, what is that? Is there such a thing? I mean, here's the thing. When you have an algorithm, when you have a digital mechanism like this, is focus really even a thing anymore? Honestly, because in the context of the analog world, you can only move in one direction at one time. But when you're talking about a digital instrument that is taking multiple readings simultaneously, what does that mean? It's not focused on them. There is no splitting of focus. And certainly you don't have the same person is not looking at the sort of inventory data that's coming out of these mechanisms versus the productivity data. These are different people. There's a productivity manager. The productivity manager is completely focused on the productivity of the worker. And so these mechanisms, they don't have a focus or non-focus. They're collecting all this information simultaneously. It is they don't have to sacrifice resources to do one thing while doing another. So the concept of focus, which means I'm doing one thing to the exclusion of others, doesn't exist in the context of this. And if you have a productivity manager who's looking at it, focus is a bullshit word here.
When you're starting out at Amazon, productivity is not a factor in performance evaluation. We focus on safety, whether that's,
He told me he was going to be fired if he'd had 3 strikes on his productivity tracking. Are you saying that's not Amazon policy?
The number of performance-related folks that leave the company is a very, very small minority. That is not where we focus. And if there are issues where someone is having performance-related issues, we want to understand why and how we can help them, or maybe that's not the right function for them.
I'm sorry, could you just pause it really quickly? Like the passive language of people leaving the company due to performance related issues here. It's so slimy because, and they say it's a minority of the instances they're dealing with. Would that protect you if you weren't hiding behind an algorithm, which is what they're doing here, right? Well, the computer says you're not meeting these productivity standards, so strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. Would that matter if a small number of people you're firing based on age discrimination? If you did it to a small fraction of people, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. They hide behind the algorithm and the technology, which sets standards for productivity that 25-year-olds can complete. But then when somebody who is older who might have to work at a slower pace, then they say, oh, it's just a small minority of cases. If based on traditional standards and how we assess what is actually age discrimination, that would not pass the smell test, but they hide behind their technology.
There was that New York Times report that found that they're burning through their people so fast that they're going to run out of workers. And I guess they're just not focused. That's not the focus, that we're just putting people through the meat grinder. That's something that just happens sort of right outside our peripheral vision.
Right. That's just a byproduct.
And the people that leave, they're not fired. They're leaving.
There's a lot of just nuance to that, and it's just hard to.
It depends on your focus.
Number of performance-related folks that leave the company is a very, very small minority. That is not where we focus. And if there are issues where someone is having performance-related issues, we want to understand why and how we can help them, or maybe that's not the right function for them to be performing within the fulfillment center.
It's really important that you answer the question I'm asking you. I asked you, if someone has 3 productivity kind of flags on the system, can they be fired at that point?
I mean, yes. Yeah.
What you just answered when I asked you that question before was something entirely different. Now you're giving me the actual answer to my question. Do you not recognize that's a problem? There's an algorithm here tracking a human worker. The computer system is saying this person's not quick enough, which, to be fair to him, the guy was 63. And then you were going to sack him based on what the algorithm decided was whether he was productive or not. That's an issue, isn't it?
But to be clear, the algorithm is not making those decisions.
It's informing it.
So the conversation that he had with his productivity manager was, well, the system told me you're not being productive enough. That's not a human in the loop. That's a human telling another human what the computer told him.
There you go.
Our firings are data driven, so it doesn't really count.
That's like the sort of arm's length reason they like to go to McKinsey for consulting is it wasn't us that made the decision. It's just the sort of truth that we have access to through this algorithm.
The new middleman is the algorithm as opposed to a third party consultant.
That's sort of what Walt Bogdanich and Michael Forsyth said on Monday. Basically, that sometimes it's kind of similar to what the algorithm is doing. They're essentially outsourcing the culpability of restructuring, layoffs and things like that to another. Oh, it's not us; it's the algorithm. Sorry,
it's a little unseemly to fire a 63-year-old before he's has access to his pension in 2 years. So it's the algorithm that's informing that, and the strike system.
You tell the workers that, but then you tell the lawmakers that actually no, it's not algorithms. It's people that are making the decision. Algorithms are just we could give her, take or leave the algorithms. It's a people business.
And the algorithms also make it easier for the people working at the corporation to not feel personally liable and responsible for these things, which, it doesn't take much of an imagination to start thinking about how that could lead to some very horrible things down the road. I mean, already I go to those tort conferences and, you can find documents that because they feel so insulated from the decisions they're making, we're going to go ahead with this product. We've invested too much in research and development. And someone down the line is like, this is causing cancer in a certain percentage. Well, look, I'm looking at how much it costs us. That's not my job to look at that part. If you could farm that all out to an algorithm, it's a nice recipe for some real horribleness. But good for that guy. How do we import him or that process into this country?
Yeah, like what is he?
Because isn't labor in
Right.
In Parliament like a tiny sliver of maybe that they haven't, but I mean this was just 2 days ago. It's not. It would be nice if we had some type of functioning government like that, but well, one can wish.